BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor, take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward.
Wow, that's profound and very rewarding. Again, I became aware of your progression and what happened after we met. So it happened already a few times where we see after a long time good course that the life has taken. I think there is one moment in our life where we start thinking about the impact and legacy. And it is almost ingrained in our nature. Most people desire to have a good impact and positive legacy. When I see you and I see other people that express and show that their life is more fulfilling than they were before, that means something positive happened. That fulfills my life, and that fills my life with more meaning and with more joy.
In today's episode, I sit down with one of the most influential coaches in my life, Robert Wojcik. He's a former standout tennis player that turned elite coach and entrepreneur. Robert's story is one of grit, passion, and relentless pursuit of excellence. From his early days on court in Poland to shaping the next generation of athletes, he shares the lessons that fueled his journey. Together, we explore what truly it takes to recognize and nurture potential. We dive into his transition from competitor to coach, and his mission with AmeriLink, a platform revolutionizing opportunities for international athletes. This conversation is more than just about tennis. It's about seizing opportunity, embracing challenges, and leaving a lasting impact.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Kollman Gearhart. A former athlete and motivational coach, I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living all my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
Well, yet again, it is a full circle moment on the BTB project, as I've had a lot of listeners, a lot of former clients, a lot of people that I've been able to impact as a coach ask me, how did it happen? Where did this all come from with your story? And today's guest is actually one of the biggest focal points. He's coming today from his homeland of Poland. I'll never forget the opportunity that he gave me when I was broken, lost, but still slightly motivated tennis player, trying to find my way and having this big goal. He had a tremendous career, not only as a junior tennis player, but found his way to the United States on a scholarship to the University of South Carolina. He was one of the biggest advocates for me at the Wigwam Tennis Academy in Arizona. Also currently spending some time in Delray Beach, where he was able to develop competitive tennis players. We're going to be able to talk business. We're going to be able to talk his personal life. And I guarantee he's going to impact you today as the listener. Mr. Robert Wojcik, welcome to the BTB Project.
Thank you, Kollman. This is quite surreal. We've lost touch for quite some time, but you see where you are and connecting in this fashion. It is surreal in the best possible way.
I appreciate that so much. As I mentioned, the pieces that you were able to instill in my life, it has been something that has ignited a lot of other people's goals, dreams, and ambitions. When I came to you, at that point, I was overweight. I had this dream. I had a good friend of mine that was from Colorado that had ties to you. I mean, his dad was cleaning the floors of my dad's business, and somehow, some way, We got connected that led me to Arizona. But a lot of people say when they hear my story, Robert, that it was impossible. And one of the big things that I've pushed is that impossible is nothing. When I say that statement, what starts running through your mind about your journey?
Yeah, that's a really nice take on basically our lives, yes. And there's element in all of us of a dream, of something that emerges out of who knows what, that inspires us to do something in life, whatever that is. In your case, in my case, it was tennis that took over large part of our life and became this vehicle of really understanding what's happening inside of us, outside of us. It had an overarching value in our lives. But it started with this fascination, with a sense of awe almost, what this sport kind of delivers in your life. For me, it was a slow process that started with my brother, who became completely obsessed with tennis based on 5-minute clip that he's seen. This was during communist Poland, and he saw in the news just a short snippet of Wimbledon final. And he's never seen tennis. He's never knew what tennis was. And when he saw it, he just knew, that this is it. And my mom thought it was not anything real, that she doesn't have to worry about it. There was no courts, there was no clubs around, there was no balls, no rackets. So she thought that this was a brief encounter with something that fascinated him, but nothing serious will come out of this. And yet he couldn't get it out of his mind. And I think everybody can speak to this moment in life where something becomes so real that you cannot just get it out of your mind. And I think that the birth of the idea, birth of the dream, we don't even know what it's going to bring. Yes, it's just like it's a very dark, unknown sphere to which we are really drawn. So my brother was an inspiration through his obsession. He managed to find the club. 1 year later, he was playing with the badminton rackets in front of our apartment building. He was doing everything he could to keep that dream alive, and I was just getting on the ride. So for me, that process of becoming like entrenched into the sport was slower. I was very young at the time. I was younger than him. He insisted, persisted, and I was going on the ride. At some point, he withdrew from tennis. For me, it was kind of a gradual birth of the lifelong journey. I could not pinpoint to one moment like in my brother's story, but there was a lot of moments where this became bit by bit bigger and bigger. And I think this is a good contrast. His story began with a single event. My story, or my fascination with what could become out of tennis, was a more gradual process. And then, as a result of being always with him and always hanging out at the court, suddenly I found myself pretty good doing this. And suddenly I won the small local tournament. And soon enough, I'm invited to this camp to go. Everything in my case was thanks to him, but it was kind of a natural, slow, bit by bit engagement. And eventually, by 15, I'm moving out of my hometown to play in this other club in Warsaw, and suddenly I'm in federation. Everything, you become in that next stage. What else can you achieve? What else can you dream about? Like, it seems that in our being, for most of us, there is that need to aim, to dream, to see what else can be. It's like if we don't have that, we seem kind of empty and meaningless. So I think that it was in that fashion that took me to Warsaw, where I spent 7 years. And then the next dream was playing professional tennis, which never really materialized to extent because the resources in Poland, but college tennis became a real alternative, and that materialized. I did have aspiration to play pro tennis, which was again next stage to that journey. And then we started family right after I graduated, which changed a little bit the plans. Our son was born 1 year after I graduated, so we had to think. I put that priority on staying with the family and my son.
Yeah.
But the dream never stopped. Yes, the next thing was in coaching. The next thing was in developing technology for tennis. I'm still very eager to see what else can happen with tennis. So impossible. I don't know that I thought of this in a category of impossibility, but rather in the category of what exciting things are ahead and whether they're possible or not. It was more like I need that inspiration to live fully.
That journey. And ironically, another similarity between you and I is my brother is the one who got me involved in tennis. He was 4 years older than me, and he was the one.
So
Yeah,
as mine is 4 years older. How funny is that? This is really interesting.
he's the one that could just beat me in every sport, Robert. I mean, he was the basketball guy, the baseball guy, and the runner. I've shared this story a few times on the podcast, but he was going into a senior year of high school, and I started playing a little bit of tennis with my dad. And there was one spot remaining on the varsity tennis team. And I remember playing him for the final spot on the team when he was a senior and I was a freshman. And I beat him to make the high school team. And that was the day that he quit tennis. That same day,
Oh, la,
he
la.
actually, him and his friends duct taped me to a flagpole and made sure that I would never forget that I
Oh
beat
my
him
goodness.
on the tennis court. That
Oh my goodness.
tough
This is really
brotherly
funny.
love was something that I'm sure helped sparked a lot of the roadmap and success that you had in tennis, business, and in life. And listen, a lot of the moments that we create, the possible moments, as you said, doesn't come without overcoming challenges. And I remember when I first met you and I got to Wigwam, and financially we didn't have much money. I was broken as a kid. I just didn't have much confidence, and I knew I had to take this risk, right? And I know you remember the setting very well, where the club was nice and excellent amenities, but there was a time and a place where I couldn't stay at the club because I couldn't afford it.
I remember the dorm. I remember the shelter.
Yeah, I wanted to train, but couldn't afford it. And so I remember you giving me an opportunity where I was putting water out on the courts and kind of helping with some of the morning duties around the club. And then at the time, I'm staying off site at an old abandoned women's shelter and
Yeah.
walking or riding my bike to the club each day to train, but mattress on the floor. I did a lot of unconventional things to have this opportunity. So when you think of some of the challenges that you've faced and how it's gotten to where you're at today, what are some of the biggest challenges that come up when you think through that?
The and thanks for sharing reminding me the story. You had that strange intensity about you that I really found captivating, and I was attracted to it because as a coach, I think this is what you're looking for, a bit of a crazy mind in the sense that there is a spark. There's something that is willing to push and go extra mile. So I remember that you came across as someone that had that extra intensity in you. So in competitive tennis, obviously you want that little edge, this emotional edge, that ability to push through some things. When I found myself in Warsaw when I was 15 years old, I was so desperate to move to the next stage of my tennis career that I felt like I was willing to do anything at that time. And I remember it was in '86, I moved to Warsaw and I started living in a tennis club, similarly to you, which was very, very close to the rooms were very close to the tennis courts. And that winter, it was one of the coldest winters in the century, actually. I remember, I couldn't tell you in Fahrenheit how cold it was, but it was minus 35 degrees for over 3 weeks. And the water system that was heating the facility broke. The ice completely blew the whole system. And I had an option to leave, yes, but I don't know. I was so ready for this next stage that I said, I cannot go back home. This is not the moment for me to go home. And for 2.5 weeks, I actually became sick and there was some complications, but I had a frozen water in my jar in my room. I slept in the minus temperature, actually. So,
Wow.
so we still train. The only place that was warm was a shower. So, needless to say, I had some really extensive, long shower moments. For some reason, there was still warm water in the shower. But other than that, It was freezing temperature in my room, but I just did not want to go back. And I did not want to stop training. And I don't even know that I felt pain. It was just no brainer. It was no brainer. So needless to say, that was not the best for my career because it actually slowed me down for at least 2 years. I became sick quite a bit. I had the donation from other coaches to saunas and to solariums to warm up and to pick up some color because I became kind of very fragile after that. And so I would say that it held me back for another 2, 3 years before I actually started thriving again in some way and form. So there was I would say that this was one of the moments, and I don't know that I would call it a low moment. It was in my early career definitely impactful, but I did have the desire to move on and to play, and I saw this as an opportunity, and I just didn't know to think any other way. I had options to go to other places, go back home, and I just did not want to. It was too strong to the desire to stay in that place and continue training.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one. Tennis players, I think they are very exposed to failure in general. So I think it's a very particular sport, and I think if you survive tennis, I think you know how to lose when you know how to experience the lows, because there is a lot of them. There's a lot of them within each match. There is a lot of them in the season. If you look, even the top players in the world, they lose more than 50% of the time. So you're exposed constantly to the mental beating and this whole evaluation process of what this all means. Like, I don't know that there is another sport in the world that forces its students to think so much about what it really means. Am I really fit for it? Is this really something that I should be doing? Like in tennis, because you play very high volume of matches. If you are exposed to whatever 90, 100 matches a year, and each of them to 120, 150 points, and half of it you are losing, I mean, that is a beating, mental beating. So again, I think that I have full respect to people that went through the journey of tennis. And I think aside, of course, external pressure and difficulties, financial being very often the difficulty, not finding right resources to surround you and to facilitate your journey, but more importantly, internally, really questioning the validity of your journey and overcoming this over and over again. I think this is probably the biggest challenge. I think it speaks very well to your mission that you are fulfilling through your great podcast. How we create this resiliency to reach who we are made to be, or reaching this quote impossibilities. But it is always a journey through lots of failures and losses, that's for sure. And I think the healthy relation to that, I think, is probably one of the most important assets in that journey.
Yeah, and being able to take that type of mindset, the game of tennis does come with its fair share of failure. What attracted me to the sport was not necessarily the moments where I failed, but the moments where I succeeded. And even though that at the time before meeting you, that success was few and far between, I tasted it enough to where I'm like, man, if I really figure out a way to learn the game, a part of me had to learn who I was as an individual and my identity and my tolerance to take on the failure of the game, but also find a coach that saw the potential in me and empowered the potential in me despite what I looked like, despite that I was a 0-star recruit and I didn't have some of the resume or accolades that a lot of the players have that coaches salivate over to have the opportunity to work with them. So, as I'm saying that, when it comes to potential, you've talked about how you've been able to develop your potential as a player. We're going to talk about how you're developing your potential in business. But when it comes to identifying potential in others, what has allowed you to have the gift, Robert, to see potential in somebody when they might not see it themselves? because when I saw you and I was there, I had this dream, and I appreciate you talking about the ambition and fire and drive that you saw in me. But there was a lot of times where I didn't see it in myself. So whether it's me or other athletes, what gave you the gift of uncovering potential?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. I think that there's an overarching the attitude that we either take or not. If you take this attitude that there is potential always, I think it changes everything. And I have to say, my wife has been very instrumental in me understanding that there is never a time where I approach the person or the player with the idea that there's no potential. And the reason being is that the potential is always there. We don't know towards what exactly the degree to which that potential will materialize, but it is absolutely true in all cases that potential is there. So I think that with this underlying attitude, I think you start things or start relationships in a very different way. Then it's a game of patience, of course, because everybody has a very different path, different curve of development. A good example being one of my daughters, my children in general, who develop very differently, one slower, one faster. And I think looking back, you really know that certain things kick in the brain in the very different moments, and you cannot jump start any of the stages. Sometimes we can stimulate, we can provoke some growth, we can create the right environment, provide nourishment. But in the end of the day, there's a moment where life decides, okay, now it's time to turn on this switch in the brain of the individual. And I I think I wish I would be even better in this, because I think this is so essential to know that everyone has potential. And I think that the greatest people that lived on this earth had this humility and the wisdom at the same time to know that if there is life, there is potential. If there is a person, there is some gift that is sitting in them and just waiting to be uncovered and unveiled. And I wish I could develop this to even greater degree, to come to this realization when we meet person
Yeah.
and have that excitement and joy of looking for that, because this is where the magic happens. And that interaction and that moment in which you acknowledge that potential, maybe like you said, that maybe they don't really fully there is, it's truly there, and together kind of patiently work to create the right environment so that door opens and finally it emerges. And I think this is one of the most beautiful things that we can experience in I guess in any human interaction, whether it's a relationship or whether it's a leadership in business or whether it's a coaching situation with sports. So I wish I more of that, to be honest with you. When I did a lot of, my wife has that wisdom and that humility to see that more, and she's been a great inspiration in that regard. And I wish to continue developing that aspect that basically sees potential in every living creature and in every athlete that I come across, and that I have enough patience and wisdom to create them and then to wait with them until that becomes true.
Your ability to recognize the support system that you have with family, it was something that I certainly experienced with our time together, with, your wife being at the club often, and at the time, kids being very young, both exceptional tennis players. And, listen, when it comes to identifying potential, it often sometimes is something even me as a coach, I wish I saw some things in students sometimes that I possibly missed. But some of the greatest support that I've had to help me see things in a way that I never thought I could see them is my family. So being able to have those different subsets of influence and support and encouragement has allowed you to be able to help a lot of people. And I find it interesting that, here you are as a elite tennis player coming out of Poland. You have your opportunity in the United States with collegiate tennis. The tour didn't work out exactly the way that you wanted to, but you still had this fire in your belly of how can I give back and help people on the court and in life. And now it's progressed on the business side to a concept like AmeriLink. And I know that it's been in the making for the better part of 25 years. And I find it ironic that this concept of potential and finding what someone is capable of doing, and in this case, it's international athletes that are looking for opportunities in the United States, just like you had, that you're actually helping not only identify that, but helping promote them to these schools in the United States. The parallel of what you've experienced in your own personal life as an athlete to how you're helping athletes now, what does that mean to you?
I think there is something in us that wants to share the experiences. And I think coming to United States and starting college was difficult, definitely, because I didn't speak a word of English when I came. So it was a bit traumatic in the beginning, I have to say, but came through this year somehow. But overall, it was quite incredible, and ability to extend the career, that is kind of a motivational block in my mind. How can we extend careers? Because very often around the world, especially people that finish high school, they are kind of faced with the reality of either entering very challenging university settings where there is basically no more high level sport activities available, uh, or taking a professional route and playing professional sports, which means that you take a huge risk on any other careers. And there is United States that uniquely developed this system of education combined with the high level sports. And that experience and this realization that this is still possible, that both ways can actually materialize, your career, your education, and your sport can continue grow. I think to me this was almost a miracle, and I'm indefinitely grateful to the U.S. system of education and sports that it exists. So as soon as I finished college, I started thinking basically how we can start helping people to find those opportunities. And opportunities are vast. There is upwards of 2,500 schools that offer various sports. So I became fascinated with the idea. So already in '99, I graduated in '97. I started building a bridge back to Poland, because actually leaving Poland and leaving everything behind, it's not always easy. It's somewhat traumatic, and I think I was emotionally looking to build the connection back to my own country.
Mm.
So that first bridge that I started building was through Polish athletes that were maybe good enough or that were hungry enough to go for United States universities. So this is how it started, and I think this is a natural tendency. I think everybody that experienced something good wants to share that, and in my case, it was positive. I saw lots of value in it. I found very fascinating the fact that education was not as stressed or to the degree that it is in Europe. However, character development through sports was, and I find this also unique to US education, that there is a progression in education, and there is ability to life not only through books but experiences in athletics. And I think if you look at the overall development of a person and what these people achieve actually afterwards, it's rarely what you know from books that carries you on through your challenges and through your careers, but more so it is the character and the life lessons that you've learned through sports. So I would make a very strong point that combination of features that you experience in the education is actually optimal. And being so and believing that's the case, I felt very compelled to start helping athletes, which led in '99 to helping this one boy from Poland whose father actually really liked the idea. And in 2000, we began conceptualizing the business in Poland, and him having some resources in Poland and some office spaces and some very good ideas as well. He came up to join forces, and him more on the business side, more financial side, and me more starting from the knowledge of the US system and having this own experience to launch this endeavor. And yeah, it's been good. Over 600 people benefited from it. The business proved to be smaller and more difficult than we thought initially. There is limits to it. At that time, at least, when technology was still not in the place where it is today. However, it was steadily there. It was basically reduced to one person that was running a business through most of the years until about 2020. And then technology was more mature, and I decided to go back and try to create a bigger platform that would allow us to take all these experiences in placements and in guiding all these individuals and put them into some form of tools and technologies to help anybody, including the ones that don't have resources, and including the other counselors that maybe don't have the experience and knowledge of the US system to actually access and properly guide people to the best opportunities. So that's how it was born. And we are in this very nice place that it seems that the impact will be bigger and bigger as we grow with this platform.
Being able to help that one player back in 99, based off of your experience of kind of almost, selling the opportunity, that same opportunity you had when you were able to go to South Carolina and take that opportunity to be a student athlete. I just think that is a remarkable testament to not just that one player, but all of the athletes that you've been able to help to this point. And that doesn't come without also having some influences and mentors along the way. And your coaching style, your leadership style, the way that you approach business, entrepreneurship, all stems from a lot of influences that you've met along the way. And I know that you've mentioned in previous writings and things that I've come across that folks like Coach Caswell and Coach Steve Smith have been huge impacts for you. And if it's the Steve Smith that I know that might have started something called Tennis Smith back in the day, where you could go on a website and look at live action videos of some of the best tennis players and slow motion break it down to help with teaching technique. That's an amazing individual out of California. When I say mentorship and leaders that you've come across, who have helped you shape the most into who you are today?
I think everybody could write the book on this if they could. I couldn't, so I managed to go over a few strongest influences. I think starting in Poland, when I began playing tennis, I think the I should give credit where credit is due. The first person that really started taking me to the court day by day was this older coach. At that time, he was in his 70s, I believe. He was really from the pre-war era, but he was just relentless in taking us back to the court and hitting and stringing rackets for us. And he would just hit and hit with us. I don't remember much coaching, much teaching, but his personality was definitely jump-started. And if you remember, I told you that I did not even realize when I started being pretty good. And it was thanks to him. It was not sophisticated. It was not full of information, but the heart was there. He was clearly that person that wanted to share the sport and that saw the potential and took the time and energy to instill that love. So yeah, he was quite amazing. And then going forward, obviously, we've gone through a lot of coaches. Surprisingly, when I look back outside those time already in the United States, there was really not that much information. So a lot of coaching that we've experienced back then, and I think still a lot of people, even with the access to all this information today, could say that there is still shortage of good information. Good shortage of information just around us. Yes, there is information, but you have to go and look for it. Today you can find it through all the media, through YouTube's. and you have to learn kind of to sort it through rather than to find it.
Right.
But it's available. Back then, it was nothing. I learned my tennis basically when I finished. From the intellectual standpoint, I learned tennis when I finished college. So I had a fantastic influence. Ned Caswell, who was my coach. I was in South Carolina for the last 2 years.
Yep.
Since I didn't speak English, I started with a junior college, and in my second year of junior college, I was exposed to maybe one of my best experiences in tennis, which was Coach Ned Caswell, who was truly inspirational and still is. We are, after all these years, we are still very close friends, and he's a close friend with all his players, truly caring about individuals. His story in itself is phenomenal because he was a basketball player all the way up to the freshman year of college, and he ended up playing highly successful career. He became 2 times All-American and went on to have a very successful professional career, and all of that without any junior experience. It's a phenomenal story, actually.
Wow.
If you get a chance to get him on the podcast, I highly encourage him because I don't know how he did that. I mean, this is phenomenal, but I think part of his phenomenon was his charisma. I think he is incredible athlete, but incredible personality with so much conviction and with so much faith, so much hope, just shining brightly through everything he does. And I think everybody who interacted with him until today, they see that inspiration of hope and faith that we've seen. It was not religious. It was simply human, very high degree of care, of faith, of hope in everybody around. It was super inspirational. And we all still go back mentally to him as kind of an anchor to the good things that happened back in the day and are still happening. So yeah, those are definitely individuals that made the impact. Immediately after college, I was already with my wife, and I have to say that she has been a very big inspiration. We came out from very different backgrounds. She came out from very intellectual background in terms of tennis, played tennis competitively, but until the age of 18. And then she started studying under Steve Smith in Tennis Tech, which was at that time the best school for tennis coaches in the world. And she was a very close associate, and she worked under Steve for quite a few years. And through that, I became exposed to Steve, who comes from highly intellectual background on tennis. I think he's done more work in tennis than arguably anybody else in the world. He was influenced by Vic Braden, so we all feel that whoever was influenced by Steve Smith has been somehow influenced by Vic Braden and his studies and his research in the 80s. He was a faithful disciple of Vic Braden, and he created a system of teaching that was based on his principle, but he put his own twist on it and really mastered the art of teaching on top of the information that he's gained through Vic Braden. So I had the privilege to be analyzed by him. I remember the month I finished my university, and I thought I had a fairly successful career. I was ranked in NCAA 1, and I was one of the best doubles players in the NCAA. And I remember going to meet him for the first time, and he video analyzed me.
Yep.
And he totally just put me to dust. And he says, "You don't know anything." He's a rough individual. And honestly, this was the first time I opened my eyes. I don't know how to hit the tennis ball, which is a strange realization after playing tennis for 20 years. Yeah, it was a shocking experience, but I took it very seriously. And obviously my wife came from that background. I came from competitive background, so there was a lot of tension for many years. But out of that tension came a great lessons. We were fortunate not to argue too many about other things, but tennis was very, very contentious subject. So there was a lot of fights, a lot of battles, but it was a learning at its best. There was a learning in the fire. So I was forced to think about tennis in a new way. Obviously, I had my own experience, and I was very curious, and I was quite intense, and kind of this stimulated my very deep passion to actually know what this is all about. So soon after, I started creating databases of all tennis skills based on all these resources and information that I gained, and I started creating. In late 90s, basically, I started putting together this kind of conceptual framework to what I understand tennis is. And that continues until today. I'm going to introduce one new technology also that has to do with actually organizing the process of training. And so I was very lucky. I was very lucky through this connection. I was very lucky to meet Steve, who became almost like a grandfather to our children, because he's very closely, we are very close to him, and he's been very kind to our family and to our children.
One other important influence was Ian Barstow, gentleman from Australia that has spent many years on the tour with his wife Melinda. They both live in Delray Beach, and over a number of years we have worked together in our tennis program here in Delray Beach, where Ian was running a tennis fitness. This is a gentleman that has done so much research and so much digging into details of what is important in the development of a player, of a person, truly academic mind, and yet with a very profound practical experience, traveling around the world for 10 years with his wife on the WTA tour and watching all the best professionals in the gym and on the court. So with him, we have engaged in a number of projects, and this interaction and the fact that we were able to exchange ideas and listen to each other on a daily basis for a pretty long time was definitely something that I would mark as an important influence. Ian is one of those curious minds that simply was a great resource for me as he daily digged into important research and academic papers related to athletic and tennis development. So it has been very fruitful and very interesting to be around him over the years, and my understanding of what it takes to develop a good tennis player, performance player, has been largely influenced by his ideas and his curiosity. We have engaged in the first edition of this Tennis 360 program a number of years ago, where he conceptualized important elements of this program, and that allowed me also to take a different look at what is really essential in the player development.
I met some great people like Frank Giampolo from California, who also shaped somehow my understanding of tennis, but from very different perspective, from very different angle, yet very profound and very knowledgeable. So all of this, I think, these were the strongest tennis influences, I would say. And then obviously there are other influences in life. I think, we could speak some positive, some negative. Not all the influences come across as those pleasant, pleasureful influences. Some of the best influences are actually negative. It depends how we take it. So there was few of those. I think those experiences in life where we learn a little bit more your story, actually, after all these years, the biggest inspirations were not necessarily those inspirations, flower inspirations. Those were tough inspirations. Also being 7 years by myself, living since I was 15 to 22 in Warsaw, I engaged with different people, with different groups on the spiritual level as well, that made an impact.
I love what you said about mentors. One of the mentors that I had that was a tough, unwanted mentor was the first private tennis lesson that I ever taught. And this gentleman still has a nice, shiny indoor tennis facility here in Colorado and has made a unbelievable name for himself. And I remember paying for my first tennis lesson. And after the tennis lesson, I said, "What'd you think?" And he said, "There's no way. There's no way you're going to be able to do this." And
So that was your first mentor.
that's right. But it's funny how, almost 15 years later, he ended up being a high school coach. At the time, I was a head high school coach, and we ended up playing respective teams. And I ended up winning that match. And I'll never forget shaking his hand after that match and thanking him. I think sometimes the misconception with maybe some of these unwanted mentors, it might have felt unwanted in the moment, but it was
Right.
necessary for our development to tap into the resiliency aspect of who we want to become, right? And the story that you shared about your junior college experience, Coach Caswell, like I had the opportunity of having 17-time national champion Dick Gould on the podcast and hearing his story about Stanford and how it was developed. Back in the day, it was a big commonality of really good tennis pros to get tied into junior colleges. That some of the junior college programs in the 60s and 70s were more predominant than some of the Division One programs. And I just will never forget Dick's story about how the position at Stanford opened. The university at the time, even though he had played there, wanted nothing to do with him. And he would literally sleep in front of the office admin's door of the university when they posted the job to just try to get an interview. The guy just stood in front of him all the time. And they're like, we don't want to hire a junior college coach. We want to hire someone that is more known and prestigious program. It wasn't really a prestigious program at the time, but they saw the vision, right? And Dick just was persistent, and it's just amazing to me
Wow.
how you go from like your experience of junior college to having that impact from your coach to having the opportunity you had at the Division One level. I don't take that parallel lightly, and I've seen that success in the past with other coaches and players. But then Steve Smith, a funny, ironic coincidence between you and I is my college tennis coach for my first 2 years, Jeremiah Walsh. He is the director of tennis out in Redding, California. And I spent a lot of
Mhm.
time with him and students, and obviously my time in Northern Colorado. And I'll never forget him saying, "Hey, your technique is garbage." And I'm like, "What do you mean my technique's garbage?" And he's like, "I'm going to introduce you to this guy and he's going to take some videos of you and go from there." And yeah, my time in California, I spent some extensive time with Steve Smith, and he broke it all
Wow.
down. And yeah, because
I didn't know that.
he's right there in Reading, and being able to have the understanding of the game. And it's amazing because when I think back to our time on the court, my time as a coach, and the parallels that I had to kind of contrast between what I did as a player and what I'm teaching as a coach, is I had no idea after I was done with college how to play tennis. I'm like, I had a collegiate tennis career at the Division One level, but I had no idea how to play tennis.
Drop one thought that I'm thinking right now, that part of this amnesia when we finish playing tennis is that part of the success being a tennis player is to be thoughtless in some way, is to be free of conscious thought to compete. I'm just thinking out loud right now, why is it that sometimes even when we were exposed to some good information, but we somehow do not persist with this on the intellectual level,
You know,
but we seek those experiences of flow and the zone and getting into the zone to thoughtless, uh, thoughtless moment. It's a moment but thoughtless, and it's kind of funny that many players come to that conclusion after playing, that they don't really know intellectually much about what they were doing.
yeah, and when you're able to, some of the most fruitful moments that I've had as a coach, Robert, is being able to see it from the lens of the sideline of the tennis court and watching someone construct a tennis point, or watching the footwork pattern be performed to where they're balanced throughout the shot, or things like what you taught me. I'll never forget. I came in with a big serve, and my forehand was a pretty good weapon. My backhand was compromised, being a one-handed backhand, and I thought that you were going to spend a lot of time breaking down my one-handed backhand because that was my perceived weakness. But you actually took one of my strengths and you optimized it, which was my forehand. And you saw some moments, and I don't know where this came from, and maybe you could speak to it, to where my contact point was not truly in front, and my ball speed was going to be compromised because everything was kind of tight and restricted. And you taught me the importance of my hand and where my hand should be coinciding with the contact point, and being able to think outside of the box and not just focus on weaknesses but optimizing weapons or strengths. When you think through that, how did you develop that mindset of creating more efficiencies in the players that you're developing rather than pointing out their deficiencies all the time?
Well, thanks that you're saying this. This is actually one of the areas that I also try to improve, because I find that in my coaching, my evolution has been in that direction, but it definitely was not the case, in my opinion, early on. So the fact that you're pointing it out, I'm actually slightly surprised, because early in my coaching career, I was much more mistake prone and looking for problems and weakness rather than building on strength. But as we develop as a coaches, I think, which is scientific fact actually, that we get way more bang for the money when we start focusing on the strength. So that is scientific. I've learned it on the very intellectual level, but I also learned it through countless hours wasted on things that 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 were bringing very moderate results, where we could really focus on things that could bring the big results. So yeah, I'm a 100% believer now that it is necessary. Of course, if there is at the highest level, you cannot have weaknesses. So you have to cover those weaknesses, but you have to also develop to the point where that does not become your liability, based on which your opponents will build their tactics. But the strength-based approach, I think it's a big part of the philosophy that I try to follow in terms of coaching. And I think, and not just in coaching, I think this is starting from that conversation point, and people that we work with around, and we interact with the children, we interact with spouses, we interact with everybody. I think there's such a saving of energy and time when we begin first seeing the strength and how to maximize them, rather than attacking the weakness and really undercutting the confidence. Yes, because it's sometimes just simply way harder, and the focus becomes very negative, and the movement, the progression goes backwards. So I think that approach. Thanks for bringing it up. I didn't know that at that time I was already at least showing traces of that focus. But if that's the case, I'm glad something good happened out of this.
Absolutely. And the ability to, take that type of approach into the business side, right? The unbelievable opportunity you have to make a global impact. I remember my college tennis experience playing only 4 Americans in 4 years. And I believe the statistics right now in collegiate tennis is that only 25% or less of the roster is American tennis players, and the rest are international players. So whether it's tennis or other sports, and knowing that you've been able to hone, this craft of optimizing efficiencies and lowering deficiencies on the tennis court as a coach, but now doing it with opportunities that you have of these student athletes that are looking to come to the United States, that type of opportunity and impact and international collaboration. The world it's an interesting place sometimes, Robert, and a lot of times you see more division than you see people coming together. But what does it mean to you to know that with this mission that you're on and what you're trying to drive in today's world, that it's so against the grain of what we see on a day-to-day basis? What does it mean to you to know how big of an impact that is?
Well, thankfully, sport is kind of beyond politics. So that's a first point. I think it allows to reach beyond the boundaries, almost by its nature. But I think I reflect on the first point that you mentioned, is that when we are exposing an international athlete to American university, obviously we have to focus on their strengths. So that in any job interview or in any placement of an athlete in American university, it is very similar to work recruitment. You have basically the profile, you have CV or CV that consists of sports and academic achievements, and we better show all the strength that they have. And I think also I found this transition towards strength-based approach also after I moved to United States. I grew up in the Eastern Europe where there's a very negative approach, generally criticism and going after everybody and criticizing when they don't succeed and really getting angry about things that don't work is very predominant. At least it was. And then I came to university, and I remember those first experiences where I played for this small junior college and we lost some match, and the local newspaper wrote how great we did. I'm like, what? This is not true. We have not done great. It got me thinking. It's like it was extremely different for sure. It's that trying to look for positives in everything, maybe sometimes a bit extreme, because in the United States everybody gets a trophy, and that may not be the best thing. However, this overall approach of framing experiences as positive no matter what, I think that is essential. That is absolutely essential. And I think I found myself in this very fortunate spot where we're dealing with a highly international environment, because like you pointed out, the college athletics is incredibly integrative environment. It's now that I think about it, it's maybe one of the most integrative environments anywhere. Yes, we remember I had one American on my team. The recruiting platform is truly international.
Yeah.
Tennis perhaps more than other sports, but there are other sports also that recruit very heavily internationally. Obviously, basketball, baseball, football will be more predominantly American, but I would say all the other sports are very, very international. And this is a blessing of this place. Yes, I think we all can speak to this, that one of our best experiences and friendships that we made are truly international. I'm meeting people that I played with 20 years ago with somewhere in Brussels, Belgium, and South America, and we're still in touch. And this is one of those unique places where really those divisions are very relevant. We meet on the basis of love for sport, American love for competition, American love for performance. When we come all together to just pursue it as a team, I think this is phenomenal, refreshing place of reconciliation of all the differences that people bring from their places. I think people are coming to realization that all these divisions are very nonsensical in large degrees, and people are fed up with this. And I think the time is coming, and we see that there's this resurgence of focus into things that are really relevant, the things that are bringing us together, that make this life a little bit more worth living and a little bit more fun. And no better place that American college athletics. Seriously, this is like the essence of the integration, international integration. So I'm all in for that. I think we continue doing this and bring people from any possible country. We just started with a relationship with African countries, and it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of athletes and what kind of opportunities this system will bring. I had some great experiences with Haitian athletes. Obviously, for them, advancing and coming to the United States was a huge step in the progression of life. To be able to facilitate that and open those opportunities. And many of these people came back to their countries. Yes, so they brought the experiences from US and all this integrative attitude, and also very healthy in many ways, because I think what college sports represent is the best of America. I think that it brings the essence of what the best of America is. So they take it, they soak it, they take it back to their countries. They start working, they start building businesses, but they come confident. I think American athletics enhances confidence, and I think there's no better gift than that, aside of what intellectually, that gift of hardships through sports, but very positive hardships. I think this is a gift for a lifetime. So being able to open the door to a lot of people that come from very harsh environments. I mean, I came from harsh environments, but I think That's nothing comparatively to Haiti and to some of the African countries. When these people manage to bring their hunger, their desire, and expose it at this level, at this collegiate sports stage, I think this is life changing for sure. It is very inspiring to everybody around, because like these Haitian athletes that I interacted with, they were truly inspiring. I had amazing experience to interact with them. So yeah, I'm very fortunate, if we can bring the bigger scale to this very operation that I think on so many levels is healthy and integrative. I think this is a big blessing.
Yeah, and I got a few more for you, Robert. The aspect of doing the kind of global impact in the masses, helping a lot of people. You've also been able to drill it down to, how we've touched on how you're helping individuals and the importance of data and technology and really telling the story of development. I'm in sales right now, and it's a lot of the things that I'm measured on are data points of activity that create an outcome. And based off of that outcome, you want to be able to find ways to produce more of that if it's the outcome that you're looking for. When you're thinking through some of the breakthroughs that you've had as a coach, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, how has technology played a role in the development that you've seen? And can you touch on where you see technology in the future in sport?
We have not been exposed very much to technology when we were growing up in tennis. It was very organic, very non-technological growth. However, and when I came to college, I didn't know what email was. I remember I gave my old rackets to my roommate so he could type my papers. That's how illiterate I was to technology. And then, but little by little, I really warmed up to it. And as soon as I finished, I started really seeing that wealth of opportunities that come with technology. And a few years later, I'm basically entrenched in technology. Basically, everything I'm doing right now is somehow connected to technology. I think that the concept of integration and information flow for better results, I think is today the opportunities are just so incredible. So we've done 20 years of operation in our AmerLink agency, basically doing face-to-face contacts and almost nothing else. Yes, and that resulted with the good stories, but the impact was limited to the fact that we had to do it face-to-face. Now, trying to bring all of this into some kind of technologies that actually create more widespread access to databases, to information, to tools that allow you to do what only one person could do before. It's really stunning. And with AI now jumping in on board, we will have career recommendations even derived from our assessments, from our questionnaires, and then supported by AI in order to drive better choices. Yes. So in our AmerLink experience, one of the most important things that we needed technology for was this fundamental understanding that all of those placements are based on the best possible match. We need to find the right athlete that matches with the right school and with the right program. And it's a very inaccurate science. However, we can do a lot of things to mitigate that. So we created this merit match engine. So this meritocracy in the approach to finding the athletes and then placing them with the right school is kind of at the core of our program. That basically creates the numeric score for the achievements of the athlete and on the academic front and on the athletic front. And then we do similar tier system for all the athletic programs. And this is not to degrade or upgrade any programs or any athlete, but to create the proper match. So the good athletes don't go to schools that will not give them the opportunity to grow,
Right.
but they find this optimal place where they can thrive. So that was all done by thinking, talking, and interviewing, and nothing else. We have tools to mitigate that, and we can do it passively too. That means that more people can actually go through the process and help themselves. So they can fill up the form and have recommendations given. Hey, look, check for schools, athletic schools that are tier this and this in your sport, and creating the list of schools like this that are already good match. So I feel like already today we are going to do better job than most of the counselors that are working out there in the world and are trying to do this job, because we in the system have entire knowledge of the college programs, and we create this tier system. At the same time, we have tools to really fully understand the candidate. And so it's not just my guess what they bring to the table, but we actually can measure that to a certain degree. And it's not very accurate, but it's the best it can be done at this point.
Right.
The same on the tennis front. Generally speaking, is very technology reluctant, unlike golf and unlike many other sports. And I'm still debating what is the true reason for this reluctance in tennis. And I don't know to which degree it's a nature of the sport that is so rich and so broad that it doesn't seem sometimes that this technological sophistication brings enough to justify the effort. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's so much to cover. That why am I going to worry about these small details when there is such a fundamental things like just stay optimistic? How are we going to help technology help with that aspect when this one is undercutting all the potential future growth? So there are some big fundamental things that don't seem to be technologically dependent that we need to address. Yes. At the same time, I think that tennis is reluctant, but it's simply slower to technology than other places. So, as we spoken earlier, for example, there is no true inventory of tennis skills. This is one of the projects that I'm involved with, and I hope with your great tennis experience, we'll team up on that. So I'm working actually on the assessment tool that basically itemizes tennis to our best knowledge, to best scientific knowledge, focusing on the most important elements in 7 areas of development that will pinpoint to what is really necessary to develop a complete tennis player, and then to prioritize. Yes. So once you know the items, once you can grade them, then you can prioritize. I want to focus on strength. I'm going to focus in the competitive periods. I'm going to focus on this strength, and I create the goals based on my strength that I now fully understand, because sometimes people don't even know that they have strength until you ask the right question. And then in the preparation periods away from competition, I have these undeveloped areas that I was also not aware, whether it's in recovery or perceptual fitness or regular fitness or mental character development, that I can develop and focus a bit more. But again, we need technology for this. This is our brain comprehends, but in any given moment can only focus on a very small sample of information. Yes, we need technology to help us to create that thinking process that can work for us. And today there's no better time for that. So I'm very excited about AmerLink, and I'm very excited about the Tennis 360, because I think those will help us to actually make a little better impact. And I truly believe that we'll be able to help international athletes, to way more international athletes, parents, coaches, to actually have the progression of their career. And on the other hand, on the tennis end, also to coaches, parents, clubs, academies, to really understand better what tennis is all about and actually organize the process based on the actually not so sophisticated technology.
With the last question, I'm going to do my best to articulate really the meaning behind the question, being able to look at success and how you define success, especially with everything that you've experienced. There's a lot of different areas that you can potentially look back and pull from and be like, yeah, that was a moment that really meant a lot to me, or that was my greatest achievement. I want to get your thoughts on, what does it mean to you, Robert, to know that 22 years ago, you were on a court with someone like myself that spurred into a Division I tennis career, that spurred into an entrepreneurial spirit, developing their own coaching business, to be able to be around and help and impact thousands of other players' lives, that allowed them to go on and play college tennis all over the country, couple national champions, a couple that were able to play on the tour. A few of them decided to become coaches themselves to pay that mission forward. When I was on the court, they called me Coach K. And there's a few Coach Ks that are walking around right now because they are saying that I was an impact to them and they want that to be paid forward to others. When I think back at my career as a coach and what I did as a player, if I had to think of one defining moment that arguably saved my life and ignited me to do something extraordinary, it was that time with you at Wigwam Tennis Academy. So as I say that and you think about success in your life, what does that moment mean to you?
Wow, that's profound, and very rewarding. Because again, I became aware of what's of your progression and what happened after we met only very recently. So it is, and it happened already a few times where we see after a long time the good course that the life has taken. I think there is one moment in our life where we start thinking about the impact and legacy, and it is almost ingrained in our nature that we desire to, for most part, I think most people desire to have a good impact and positive legacy. And I think if when I see you and I see other people that express and show that their life is more fulfilling than they were before, that means something positive happened. That fulfills my life, and that fills my life with more meaning and with more joy, of course. And there is nothing nothing intellectual about it. I have a tears in my eyes when I saw your story, and I was truly not aware really of the background to the degree that I am right now. And I have not known the follow-up story. So we all live in the stories, and sometimes we're missing the bigger part of the story. It's incredibly rewarding to know that the story has progressed a certain way and not the other way. That people found joy, found meaning, and that maybe there was a small contribution that pushed in the right direction. I think I think life will take the right course for the same reason that it took the right course for you. And I think if you have a little bit of joy and desire to share that, I think that will help people steer in the right direction. Because I think we are all kind of in the darkness searching for the bright lights, and we're all trying to walk that life in the best possible way and in the most joyful way possible. And I think that we are coming across other people and we are sharing those moments when we're walking for that brief part of the journey together. But in the end of the day, we're all walking in the same direction. And I think that to find out after whatever 20 years that we have been walking all along in the same direction, and it's so many commonalities and in so many interesting and similar stories, it's fascinating. It's very profound, and it's of course very rewarding. So I couldn't be happier to sit down together with you and to fill out the missing dots in the story. So thank you for this opportunity.
I know that this is an episode that listeners and myself are going to have to go back to and listen to multiple times because there's just so much to learn from you, Robert. There's so many tremendous takeaways on what's possible in life. I just appreciate the opportunity to not only share your story, to share your business ventures, how you're continuing to help people, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And I'm forever grateful for our connection. I'm excited to see what collectively we're able to continue to do to impact others. And I just appreciate you stretching the limits of what's possible and being a living, breathing specimen of impossible is nothing. Mr. Robert Wojcik, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today on the BTB Project.
Yeah, if I can add one last thing, is that what encapsulated some of the information and some of the experiences into way more profound things that sometimes I feel, but it gives a good feeling and sense of good meaning. I sometimes don't see myself as the person that you described me. So, so I appreciate that. But it's truly very encouraging, So I think if we can spread that feeling and that level of motivation and show the level of profoundness that is available, basically, that gives us that sense that we're living the lives worth living, I think let's do it. Let's do anything we can.
Excellent,
Thanks,
Robert.
Kollman.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
What a tremendous conversation with my former academy coach, Robert Wojcik. Being able to understand his why and the path that he took growing up in a very difficult situation in Poland, playing tennis, fighting the cold, having to only find warmth in the shower, to being able to get to the United States and work his way up through junior college, to play collegiate tennis, and to ultimately become a coach that ended up deeply impacting my life. And for you as the listener, it's important to understand Robert's humility throughout the episode. There are so many different facets to his life to where giving back and being an impact is what makes him tick. And whether it's his projects with AmerLink or technology that is specialized in tennis, or even being on the court as a coach, his sole desire is to help people become the strongest version of themselves. And I appreciated Robert's ability to be transparent about how much those moments mean to him. Listen, if Robert's story impacted you, do me a favor and like and subscribe to the BTB Project. Better yet, send this message to a family member, friend, or colleague and tell them something specific about Robert's story that just was inspiring. There's so many tremendous takeaways to where it can help you become 1% better today, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. As always, I'm proud of each and every one of you. And until next time, take care.
You're told I'll be a harder temptation.